Hey everyone, welcome to this channel's first ever Q&A video. Thank you for putting in your questions. We got 6 questions that I'm going to answer here uh, that pertain to the preseason and team selection going into the game week 1 halfway through this month. I just want to remind you not to forget to join the league. League code is in the description of like every preseason video I've made so far. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to do more videos like this. So if I ever get a good accumulation of questions before a game week or even another preseason one, I'll make another one of these. If not, I'll still answer your questions, but I'll just be through either Twitter or the YouTube channel itself. But again, if I get like 5+, it's probably worth doing a video on it because maybe some other people have the same questions. Anyway, without further ado, we'll get going right away. One of the first questions was, what do you think the Sassuolo attack's going to look like if Raspadori is transferred? Um, are there other attackers worth getting? I'm assuming getting another forward, as that's what Raspadori is listed as. Um, and I would say that if he is transferred, first of all, I don't know if that's, I mean, I know Sassuolo's a smaller club that needs to make money as well, but after already transferring Scamacca and then losing Raspadori, that's almost where all the goals were coming from. Berardi would essentially be on his own up there in the attack. As far as getting another player from them, I think that leaves what's left with Defrel and Alvarez, I believe. A 5 million attacker and a 4.5 million attacker if you're using the same game that I'm using. Um, so there's pro and con to this. Con, I think, is I don't think Sassuolo will be getting many goals. There's other two basically best attackers. Berardi's more of a winger, and he's one of the most expensive in the game. So I don't think getting Berardi would necessarily be good because you're spending a ton of money on a player that really has no one to play around. Yes, he's on penalties. I'm sure if there is a goal, he's probably either getting the goal or the assist. So you do have that. He's going to be their talisman player. But without another attacking transfer in, the only reason I would suggest maybe getting into Frel would be if you want a third striker that you don't really need to play every week, but you want it to be a playing player. You want it to be a player that's going to see time that might sub in for you for a point or two. So if you're not using a three-striker system, having one of the Sassuolo strikers could be okay because then you have a playing striker for a cheap price, then coming off the bench. And then if Sassuolo is playing a Cremonese or a team like that, that maybe they will get goals against, even if they don't have the best attack, maybe you can slide them in there into a starting spot. So I'd say if you're playing a three-striker attack, stay away from this is Swallow um, attack. I would not say Berardi will be getting as much returns as normal just based on the lack of attacking threat I think Sassuolo has going forward if they lose Raspadori. Um, Other than that, yeah, you can bring one of them in as a sub, as a cheap substitute option because a playing cheap substitute is always better than a non-playing one. Next question is how much money to spend on the bench and how many playing players you should have. Um, I'm just going to address the second question first here. If you can have a full playing bench and keep it cheap and within budget, that's not sacrificing the value of your starting 11, have four people on the bench. I'm going to be looking out to see if there is a $4 million keeper once the projected squads start coming out. And then same thing with the defense, mid, and attack. If they're someone that will be seeing time, I'd rather them over someone that is not seeing time. So number of playing players, I would just say as many as you can that don't take away from your starting 11. As far as how much money to spend on the bench, generally you're looking at for me, I'm always going to have a $4 million keeper, um, the cheapest possible. I think I've I'd like to have and be able to find a $4 million defender as well. Right now I have the Winter in there because I think transferring in from Juve, why wouldn't you be playing this player as part of your starting lineup? And if the fixtures work out with them even better, I'd say as far as attacking and midfield go, I think you'd want to be able to find a 4.5 mil midfielder. And generally, you can't really find one for a striker that's going to see any time. So I'd say I'd be willing to go up to a 5 or 5.5 there. So ideally, if you can get the minimum amount of money on your bench, which would then be, I think it's 17 mil. Does that sound right? 4.5, 4.5 is 9, and then 8 for the other two fours. So 17 mil would be ideal to have as little money on the bench as possible. Um, if you need to go up a point 0.5 or 1 mil in the midfield and striker positions, then would say that would be fine as well. So I'd say anywhere between like 17 to 19 mil would be where you'd want to have money on the bench. Remember that we are now in a time in football where 5 substitutes are allowed per team, meaning that if you have a player that you think should be starting, even if they don't start, they're likely going to get in as a substitute. So you probably won't be using your bench positions too much. So it's nice having playing players there in case, but I would not be breaking the bank and using too much of your budget to go towards um, your bench, as likely you won't be using them very often. All right, the next question was which teams rotate the most in attack? And I wasn't going to go through every single team because a lot of teams we don't even want players from their attack, but I was trying to stick to more so of the big clubs that I find, at least in the past, have rotated a lot. And for me, it was the two Milan clubs. We know Juventus is starting Vlahovic in the top. We know Napoli, Osimhen, Tammy Abraham will be starting for Roma. Immobile is going to be starting for Lazio. Those are players that are solidified basically in their striking positions. Inter Milan, obviously bringing Lukaku, most expensive player in the league, you're going to expect that he's going to get more time than not. But they currently still have Lautaro Martinez and Eden Dzeko. And those two, even with Correa, rotated quite a bit last year. And now we have another striker into the mix. So that Inter, I do think that if they keep Lautaro and Lukaku, I feel like those two will be the primary strikers in the team. But I feel like that is a team where there could be some rotation, especially around weeks during Champions League or where they have two Serie matches in the same week. Another one is AC Milan. Obviously, we still have Ibrahimovic who's signed on for another year, but he gets injured frequently, which is part of the reason for their rotating door of strikers. They also put midfielders into the striking position sometimes. We got Ante Rebic, who has played the striking position last year. Um, Leao normally more of a wing position, but can be pressed forward as well. And yeah, a lot of the AC Milan attack has to do with injury proneness. And if you can hit one of their midfielders that'll be playing attack uh during a certain time, that would be great. Also, again, Giroud, another one I almost overlooked him, another older player that can be injury prone. So that's one of the reasons that AC Milan can be have a lot of rotation attack. Not necessarily because they obviously probably want Ibrahimovic and Giroud to take up those two spots more often than not, but just due to their age. And again, in those weeks where they have more than one game, you might see that rotation in the squad. So I'd say the teams that rotate the most in the attack are going to be your two Milan squads. Next question I got is to start with any Juventus players in the team for game week 1. For me right now, if you watch my draft video, if not, go and watch it. But for me, no, not right now. Juventus has okay fixtures right now. It's not like they're facing all the top clubs, but I wouldn't say they have an enticing amount of fixtures for me to uh feel like I need to double, triple up on them, or even get any players from them right now. So this is me as a Juve fan saying, no, you do not need a Juventus player in your squad right now. Um, I'd say part of the squad's still up in the air. They've had a lot of defensive turnover recently. Chiellini's gone. They've had some midfielder turnover, which is actually good for them because having lost as far as fantasy wise, Dybala leaving and Ramsey leaving has meant that there's less options in the midfield. They used to have a very rotational midfield. Now, if someone like Rabiot or McKennie is playing more consistently at the price point they're at, they might be someone you end up wanting to bring to your squad, but I'd like to see some consistency before that. We know that Pogba's injured for semi-long term right now. I've seen anywhere from like September to like the new year. So I'm not exactly sure how long that injury is going to last for. Um, Di Maria seems like he every day kind of seems more and more nailed onto there, but again, expensive for a player that hasn't proven anything in Serie A yet. If I'm picking a Juve player to start out the season with, it's probably going to be Vlahovic, but obviously that's going to be a premium player that's going to be taking a lot of your squad. It'll make it easier to jump to other premium players later. But for me, it's Vlahovic if you're going to be starting with a Juventus player. But no, I do not think that it's necessary. This seemed like more of a personalized question, but took the time to ask, so I'm going to take the time to answer. This person was asking for a fourth defender, would you consider starting with Danilo or Barahi? I'm assuming that this is someone that's going to be planning on using a formation with four at the back, kind of who to give that last defender spot to. And for me, I'd have to say if you have the space for it, Barahi. I find he's a much more attacking defender than Danilo is. He generally takes free kicks. I don't know if he'll be on penalties, especially with Jovic in there now. But he just generally gets those better attacking returns. Both teams have relatively similar fixtures right now. And I don't even think I think Barahi plays more consistently than Danilo does as well. Thanks so much for having to remind me of a player that is part of one of the worst transfers in Juve history. But yeah, I'd say in this decision, I'd go with Barahi over Danilo for a final defender spot. And someone asked which social medias I use. I don't know really to take this as which ones I run myself or what kind of places I look to for information. Um, I'll start by saying I have obviously a YouTube account, and people have been asking these questions through my Twitter account, which has been awesome. I do have an Instagram account with this. I used it for like the first few weeks of last year, and it became a lot to keep up with, so I stuck to my YouTube and Twitter accounts. But if you want to give that a follow and you want uh, me to use that more, leave a comment below and maybe I'll try to incorporate that more again. But there are the handles for the two Twitter and uh, Instagram accounts. Obviously, if you're watching this, you know where the YouTube account is. Please consider following and subscribing to these accounts. That would really help me out. Honestly, the support over preseason has been amazing. We're at, I believe, 126 subscribers, 125 or 126. I would be ecstatic if we get to 150 before season start. That would be awesome. So please help me out there. As far as other things that I use to help me, a lot of knowledge that I've gained, strategies that I've picked up for fantasy has actually come from playing the English one. I followed a couple of YouTubers that do the Fantasy Premier League. They have some really good tidbits. Even if you don't play it, there's so many different people there to bounce ideas off of. That's where I've got a lot of my ideas and how I play. I have looked at some stat stuff. I use FootMob to see, and I look back to see how consistent players are starting. They have a lot of stats on there as well. That's both an app and a website, FootMob, FUTMOB. Um, and then every once in a while, I'll just do Google searches on different statistics websites to see, and just to see people who might have yellow card accumulation versus suspensions coming up, projected length of injuries. But I wouldn't say I'm dedicated to any certain sites for Serie. I've even looked to see if there are other people doing this. I haven't seen any other YouTubers that at least speak English where I can understand. Maybe there's some Italian ones out there, but that I can bounce ideas off of for Serie Fantasy. If any of you want to converse or be on a video sometime, let me know and we can bounce ideas off each other. Just another resource to use. But other than that, I think that's going to be it for this video. Please, I love all the questions being asked, very relevant. Feel free to ask more and I'll make another video like this at another point. Take care and have a good day.